Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Simply Trade News Roundup, or just Roundup, actually. We're skipping the news. I feel like I haven't been doing that in a while. We're just kind of addressing a trade roundup nowadays in my segment. My name is Annik. I'll be your host today, and I have a special guest with me who I actually saw at the last conference. And honestly, I enjoyed that because we hadn't seen each other in person ever, and we had already recorded together. So with no further ado, her name is Mollie Sitkowski. Hi, Mollie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. You're a trade attorney, which is incredible. And you touched on this in our past episode, which you should definitely listen to. I feel like it still applies to this day because things just stack on top of each other. But if you go back to the basics, I think our episode in the past still covers all the basics of what is going on right now in the industry. But I want to thank you so much for coming on to the show another time.
Thank you for having me.
And then I also have to say that it is President's Day. So happy President's Day. If you're off, that is a very happy day. If you're not, well, just also be happy, I guess.
If you're not off and your children are, then you come into the office.
That is also a happy day.
Yeah.
You're like, bye, I gotta go. Totally have to work. Sorry.
Right. I gotta go film a podcast.
Or they're like, Molly, just stay home. No, I'll be in. Don't worry. All right. Well, let's get started. I kind of want to start with the groundwork on how is your 2026 going so far.
So, knock on wood, I feel like 2026 has felt like we got to ease into it a little bit. I felt like the whole trade community took the Christmas and New Year's weeks off because I slept 8 hours a night and got maybe 30 emails a day, and it was delightful. And then, I feel like we just kind of eased into this year, and then February 1st hit, and it's like, bam, let's go. And that's how I feel.
Yeah, January was a little bit, how do I say, boring. But it felt forever. January felt forever, and it always does. I'm like, when does it end?
Well, you don't even live in negative 15 weather for 5 days in January. That's when it feels like forever.
Yeah. I was in New York this past and it was freezing. I think it felt like negative 25. I think it was Celsius. That was Celsius, negative 25.
That was Celsius.
Definitely. But it was so freezing cold. And I thought I could handle the cold because I am, from a cold place. Germany. Well, we do have the seasons going on. And oh my God, I was like, no, my hands are going to fall off.
You forget. Your body acclimates.
Yeah. And then the next day it was 5. And I was like, well, this feels tropical now. I feel great. Anyways, yeah, I can see that. But you know what? The trade is here to keep you warm and active because there's lots going on. Something I want to address today is the first sale situation that has been, well, it hasn't been a conversation for long. It's become, I think, a conversation this month.
Well, I mean, we've been having these conversations with all of our importers. I mean, it started in 2018 with the first round of Trump tariffs where more people started exploring first sale. Before it was mostly textile companies because they had those 15% rates of duty. They were saving money by using first sale. Then in 2018, more of our importers from China started wanting to use it, and it started becoming a lot more popular. And then this latest round of Trump tariffs, all of them, the only mitigation available to you, because you don't know what tariff classification is going to be added to what list on any day. You don't know what country of origin goods are going to be targeted or lowered, or you don't know that, but you do always know your value, and your value wasn't going to change. So a lot of people, literally almost probably 98% of our clients, were looking into first sale as a way to mitigate. One of my clients, what did he call it last week? He goes, bulletproof mitigation. I was like, there's no such thing in the Trump administration, but that's cute.
I'm not an expert in first sale. So actually, I first heard of it this year, which I don't know if that surprises some of the listeners because I am not a trade expert. I'm just someone that, listens to a lot of trade and I do understand, but I don't really, in an easy English language, what is first sale and why would a company use it?
Yeah. So first sale is basically when you have a 3-tier or 4-tier transaction. First sale allows you to use the value of that manufacturer sale price. So when a manufacturer is selling to a middleman, let's say it's your Hong Kong parent company, or you're just a third-party middleman who sources your textiles or something like that. The manufacturer is selling to this middleman. The middleman is selling to the importer in the United States. 19 USC 1401A is our valuation statute. And it says that the primary method of value is transaction value. And transaction value is the price paid or payable for merchandise when sold for exportation to the United States. So, okay, is it sold for exportation when it leaves the manufacturer? Or is it sold for exportation when the middleman sells it to the importer, right? And so that broad language allowed our importers to basically say, if I can establish at the time that it leaves the manufacturer that when it left the manufacturer was destined for the United States, then why can't that be the sale for exportation? And U.S. courts in the 90s agreed. There's a case called Nisho Iwa, Nisho, and then Iwai, Nisho Iwa. And the court said, yeah, you can use that manufacturer price as the first sale, so long as it's destined for the United States. So you want to have a throughway bill, or you want to prove that it's, if it's textiles, it's marked in accordance with our FTC regulations for textiles. Pharmas, it's marked with our pharma requirements, right? So you want to show that it was destined for the United States, but then also that there was a bona fide sale between the manufacturer and the middleman. So to be a bona fide sale, you have to show that the middleman took title and risk of loss for more than a flash period of time. So if the manufacturer is selling to the middleman, and let's say the Incoterms are FOB Port of Shanghai, but then the importer purchases from the middleman also on FOB Shanghai, that middleman never had title or risk of loss, right? And so Incoterms don't determine title, just want to say that. But you do have to show in that situation that the middleman took title and risk of loss. You can't have same Incoterms. And, the middleman had to like take it into its inventory, even if it's a financial inventory. So there's a lot of requirements to use it, but at the end of the day, 3-tier transactions are that way, right? And so it wasn't that big of a burden. The burden, though, is proving to customs that you can use it.
Yeah.
And it's become increasingly harder over the last, since basically 2007, 2008, and we can talk about that in a second. It's become increasingly hard since then to use first sale.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Why has it, because I know there's changes coming up, but let's go back to that time. Why has it become harder if they established that, you know what, yeah, that seems like a viable plan. If you can prove it, then you get to use a first sale. So why did they change it to where they're like, let's make it harder for, the importer?
So in 2007, 2008, and I should look this up because I'm talking about it all the time, but I just have it in the back of my head. But the World Customs Organization, so the WCO and the WTO, WCO regulates all of its members' tariff schedules up to the 6th digit. The WTO regulates all of the values. So the GATT valuation statute, that's from the World Trade Organization. And so all countries that belong to the World Trade Organization are supposed to follow the same value rules. And so the WTO issues valuation guidance, decisions, commentary. And in 2007, 2008 time period, they said in this, the price paid or payable when sold for exportation, because the GATT valuation statute uses that same language. The WTO said, we're going to interpret when sold for exportation as the last sale before import, basically.
Okay.
And at that time, most countries then followed that rule. There were some exceptions, Canada, Japan, the EU, the US, where they didn't adopt that interpretation. Customs at that time, though, US Customs, tried to adopt that interpretation. And there was a huge outroar in the trade community. So Congress stepped in and said, this is not only court precedent, Nisho Iwa, it's also the statutory language. And customs, cannot change the statutory language. Only we can do that.
Okay. So that's where there was kind of a mismatch on what they wanted. Okay, so ever since then, which is a long time, they've been struggling, and probably companies have been struggling to prove that they're using first sale, but to their advantage. Obviously, they want to save money. So okay, let me ask one thing because I just want to understand. Obviously, there's a lot of trade deals going on. Let's say USMCA, there's free trade agreements. Does first sale, can you just use it whenever, or is there's probably exceptions? I mean, I can't imagine that there's not.
If you meet those rules destined for the United States and bona fide transactions, technically you can use it.
Okay.
None of these, knock on wood,
Yeah.
none of these trade agreements, USMCA, none of the tariffs, none of them have touched how to value the goods. I mean, we have our issues with 232 value content. We have
Right.
our issues with the US content value for the reciprocal tariffs. But the 19 U.S. 1401A language for transaction value is still there.
Okay.
And that's why so many companies have been relying on this first sale principle as a way to mitigate the tariffs, because it's basically the only thing importers could still control.
Right. Okay. So now let's jump a little forward to February, because
Right.
I think this announcement was made February of and I have it right here. So they're proposing to get rid of the first sale, right? And they called it something, and I can't find it. Something act here. The last sale. Oh, well, you kind of did talk about that. The last sale evaluation.
Yeah. So Senator Cassidy
Mm-hmm.
and Senator Whitehouse introduced into the Senate last Wednesday a bill to further define
Right.
when sold for exportation in 19 U.S. 1401A. So basically, what they're proposing to do is modify the language of the statute, which is what Customs wanted to do back in. They're proposing to modify the language of the statute to define what should be the sale for exportation. And so they've proposed two different ways to interpret it. So when they say when there's only one sale, the price paid or payable is the buyer in the United States to the seller located in another country, which is generally for one sale. That's generally how it works anyway, right? Except there are some non-resident importers. And so are they going to be considered buyers in the United States, or are their customers in the United States going to be considered buyer in the United States?
I see.
Yeah.
And so what they say is that it would increase customs revenue, which I think we're trying to just increase revenue in all areas. I mean, the
Right.
tariffs, revenue, everything is just revenue, right? I'm just questioning where this money is going, but that's another that's another
That's a discussion for a different day.
Exactly. And not for the podcast, unfortunately. Strengthen tariff enforcement. If we haven't done that enough lately, I think, right, we have to add on it. So it makes sense here.
Yeah.
And simplify CBP oversight by eliminating complex upstream pricing debates. Now, I do agree with that, because it does seem that since 2007, it's become like taxing for people trying to prove, well, obviously on the importing side, they have to prove that this is a first sale, but then, CBP has to make sure that it is a first sale. So it is a lot of energy that is being put onto a first sale situation. I'm not saying that's a bad or good thing, but it seems like it's like a high energy kind of surrounding, like it needs a lot of people to care for it, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, so in customs value audits, when you're using first sale, customs, then you have to prove that first sale is bona fide. It's the same as proving that, the middleman to importer sale that was bona fide for customs.
Yeah.
They do tend to look at both sales, even though
Yeah.
they're really only supposed to be focused on that first sale, but they do tend. So it is a bit more work for customs.
So
it's far more work for the importers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for the importers, this kind of would mean a lot, because I mean, you're losing a tool that you've probably been using, unless, some people are maybe trying to get into first sale now, but if you've been using it for years and it's worked and you're lowering your costs, now you're going to go back and adding costs. See, and that kind of, I'm not bringing politics into this, but again, we're talking about companies succeeding in the United States. How do they succeed when you're taking away tools that help them succeed and help their lives become a little bit easier and less?
Yeah. No, I mean, it definitely did save money, especially in situations. And this is another reason the government doesn't like it, is because when companies move their headquarters outside the United States to lower corporate tax jurisdictions,
Right.
then basically what that did was that created a middleman. And then that headquartered outside the United States, that middleman, they would sell to the US company at a transfer price. And that transfer price would be very high because they wanted more profit to stay outside the United States. And first sale essentially allows you to not pay customs duties on that additional profit.
Yeah.
So not only is the government losing out on tax revenue because the profit is being held outside the United States, they're also losing out on customs revenue because if you're using first sale, then you're not accounting for that profit.
Well, there's always a sacrifice. There
Right.
always needs to be a sacrifice. So okay, let's look at if this act goes through, some importers will have to assess if they will first sale go away for sure. Is it just gonna be harder?
Well, no. So the first one is in a case transaction involving one sale, the price paid or payable by the buyer in the United States to the seller located in another country. The second definition that they put in here says in the case of a transaction involving a series of sales, the price paid or payable by the buyer in the US in the last sale that introduces the merchandise into the United States. So first sale will be gone if this passes.
So let's say this passes. Importers are using first sale as of right now until it passes, obviously. What do you do?
You got to start using that second sale value again.
And that means using some of your resources too, obviously.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all the resources that were expended in putting first sale in place are also going to then have to be expended to take it out of place. So you need to change the way your supply chain is communicating with your customs broker. Because before your customs broker was probably receiving the manufacturer invoice, and now you're going to make sure that they receive that middleman invoice, right? And you also need to communicate with finance and accounting because your duties are going to go way up.
I was going to say, and that kind of means probably the products will get more expensive unless your company can make up for it and say, no, we're going to pay for it. But ultimately, again, the consumer is probably going to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
And the sourcing, do you think that some companies will just outsource, like just source from somewhere else and kind of move their sourcing? Or that is not an easy thing to do. It's easier said than done. But do you think that's a possibility for them to maybe price it lower? I don't know.
It is, but the problem with moving sourcing, which is why these tariffs have been so hard, is because you never know. You may move an entire, make plans to move an entire manufacturing line to Vietnam from China.
Mm-hmm.
And you take 6 months. And then all of a sudden, Vietnam negotiated a 19% rate with President Trump, but then he goes on vacation there and he gets mad. And now he decides Vietnam has a 25% rate. All of the things you did to put that in place are moot point now, right? And so that's why first sale was so great, because regardless of what country President Trump was having an issue with, what tariff classification, is this subject to the aluminum and steel tariffs? Regardless of that, you could control the value. And now you're not going to be able to.
And just to clarify, people that use first sale are still paying tariffs, right? They're still.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like they're exempt from the tariffs and they're not doing what they're supposed to do. They're just simply practicing their right to use first sale.
Yeah, it's a legal method of mitigating tariffs. Yeah, everyone who's doing it is still paying tariffs. I mean, that middleman markup might only be 5% sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
maybe they're only saving 5%, but that for importers who are now facing 20% duties on almost everything that comes in,
Good.
that 5% means a lot.
And 5%, I mean, if people paying millions of dollars, it does get count for something.
Yeah.
So let's just to round this up. If I know you're talking to a lot of importers and probably a lot of people are concerned on this, especially now that they're talking about it, up in the government and seeing what they want to do with it. Kind of an anxious time, again, unpredictable, but we've been through this. This is like not new to us now. I think we should never be surprised at this point anymore. You just need to take it in and see what you can do. What's your advice to people, to importers right now? Just, looking at the situation, seeing, what are we going to do?
So this is an opportunity. This is in Congress, right? So senators are going to vote on this. House members are going to vote on this, right? Your congressional representatives. So this is an opportunity to talk to them in your district and tell them exactly what implication this will have. Trying to negotiate aluminum and steel tariffs or 232 exemptions for pharma. That's all if you know Lutnick, if you know Navarro. That's a very limited group of people. This is actually a congressional process, which is kind of exciting in these tariff times. And that means that local representatives can help you. And so talk to them. If you don't want this to pass, tell them what this is going to mean to you. And hopefully the the people's will win out again, like it did in '07.
It seems like it does, but you know what is a problem is probably some people are not educated on this or they don't even know. And which is why I'm glad to have this conversation because people do listen to the podcast, which is nice. They can leave this forward, or question it, if they still don't understand. Hey, I heard this. Doesn't this affect you? To someone maybe that is in the industry. And then, to go talk to people because the more people put their voices out there, again, you said it, we might be able to win. But Molly, it's been so great. You explained this wonderfully because I really did not I mean, I understand it in a sense, but it's so complex, everything in trade. And first sale sounds like, yeah, it's your first sale. I don't know. It doesn't, to me, it sounds like something different. And I know to anyone that is probably not in the trade industry, it doesn't sound like what it actually is
Right.
to the trade people. Anyways, to our listeners, I hope you enjoyed this conversation and I hope you got something out of it. If you have any questions, you could definitely reach out to me, to Molly as well, or I can lead it forward to Molly, whatever is best for you. And if you want to hear about something else that interests you, please let me know. And to Molly, thank you so much for coming on and explaining this. And I hope, that's going to be a messy time if it does change for you.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of messy times ahead of us. But thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Hope to see you at the next conference. We'll see.
Yeah. San Antonio?
I will be there. Will you be there?
I will see you. Yeah.
Oh my God. Let's accept. And you know what? It's right by the Riverwalk, which is so fun. Guys, I'm going to plug in here. ICPA is happening March 1st through 4th in San Antonio, Texas, right at the Riverwalk. So much fun, so much knowledge. And there's going to be, I think it's like Mexican themed, which we love. That's great. So hope to see you there. If you have any questions regarding that, please contact me. You know the drill. So thank you so much. Like, subscribe, follow, do all the good things, and we'll see you next week. Thank you, Molly.
Bye.